Good evening, good afternoon. How are you guys today?
Good.
Right. Anticipating those rules. They're coming out very, very soon here. We have a July 1st date, and we will know everything that defines House Bill 1317. And basically, well, and 18. And basically, we will be defining how we will go about this recreational marijuana business procedures. So that will be done by the Med, and that's coming up July 1st. So we have, say, about 10 days before we find out our destiny with this business. So it's a lot of anticipation, and a lot of people wondering how much money is it going to cost us? Are we going to be able to pull multiple licenses? What are our options? So we do know that current medical marijuana centers are going to be the first to be able to pull these recreational licenses. So we have an elite expert panel here tonight, and I will be introducing them one by one here for your pleasure. But I don't have you in order, so you can bear with me. We have Terry Robnett. She is a lobbyist. She is a cannabis patient. And she was diagnosed with fibromyalgia over 25 years ago, and now uses cannabis exclusively to control her pain and fatigue. In 2012, she took the Colorado legislature by storm when her testimony and advocacy helped to defeat the DUID 5 nanogram THC per se bill. In 2012, she and her husband, Greg Duran, worked tirelessly to elect 420 friendly advocates in Colorado. She has continued lobbying for cannabis patients' rights at the state capitol, and has been to almost every task force and work group meeting that there is. Huge patient advocate, and owns the Cannabis Patients Action Network. So if you're a patient and you don't know where to get information or what to do, definitely talk to Terry. Thank you for being here. Then we have Samantha Walsh, a lobbyist, a well-respected entrepreneur and single mother who utilized her background in top-level state politics to become one of the premier lobbyists in the hemp and marijuana industry. In the 2013 legislative session, she successfully lobbied the industrial hemp bill, nicknamed the Casey Act, that allows for farmers to grow industrial hemp in Colorado without permit from the DEA. That is pretty awesome, isn't it? She's also effectively lobbied on behalf of the Amendment 64 campaign, implementing several historic marijuana laws in Colorado, regulating responsible adult and social use. She worked closely this summer with the State of Colorado Department of Revenues and the Department of Agriculture, implementing rules and regulations that will benefit both marijuana and the hemp industries, and create a viable and brand new prosperous economy for our state. So these are our front-line people. And these are the people that you want to talk to about your businesses and what you think needs to be happening, your suggestions with these laws. Thank you for being here. We have Warren Edson, who's one of the organizers of the Amendment 64, two-time winner of the Normal Legal Committee's scholarship, and has been a featured speaker at the 5 Normal Legal Conferences. He has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Christian Science Monitor, and the Westward. He has been known as one of the industry's most valuable assets. So thank you for being here today, Warren. We have Bob Hoban. Bob Hoban is a seasoned full-service commercial practitioner, drawing up more than 15 years of diverse legal and practical entrepreneurial business experience. He regularly counsels clients regarding corporate organizational, wow, there's a lot of big words in your bio. And government issues, general commercial transactions, real estate development transactions, government licensing, strategic acquisitions, debit or credit issues, employment matters, and commercial litigation. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We also have Charles Houghton, 26-year real estate attorney, business attorney, commercial financing, related matters, including all aspects of representing both private and governmental entities in multi-million-dollar transactions. He also has done a lot of work for the Colorado Springs Medical Cannabis Council and the Colorado Springs local municipality laws. So thank you for being here tonight. We have Chris Walsh from MMJ Business Daily. Have you guys ever read that publication? It's online, correct?
Yep.
And there's a lot of really good, they just came out with a book that has a bunch of statistics in it that is really good information, so I would encourage you guys to check that out. He's the editorial head of the Medical Marijuana Business Daily. He covers daily financial and legal news of interest to cannabis dispensaries, investors, lawyers, and related vendors. Profiled in Dow Jones Newswires as a top business journalist in the cannabis industry, Walsh is frequently quoted in the media, including MarketWatch, the Seattle Times, USA Today, and the Boston Globe. Walsh keynoted the National Marijuana Business Conference 2012 and led the research team for MMJ Business Daily's new Marijuana Business Facebook 2013, or Fact Book 2013. He has more than a decade of professional experience as a business reporter and editor at daily newspapers. He earned his MBA from Regis University in Denver. Thank you for being with us today. We have Mark Balkin, the head of the Union Marijuana and Hemp Division now. I don't know how many of you are employees, but you know, the union has come in to establish a set of grounds here for these employees to make sure that the employees are paid well and to try to help our industry, so we appreciate their support very much. He's the organizing director for the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, Local 7, the largest union in Colorado representing retail, food processing, healthcare, and retail marijuana employees. For the last 3 years, Mark and UFCW have been on the forefront of virtually every critical issue impacting the marijuana industry, including bans, DUID, advertising, and most recently advocating against vertical integration, while a leading spokesperson for raising the standards of the industry and protecting the rights of workers. Local 7's support and campaign for Amendment 64 is credited as contributing to the mainstreaming the issue and its ultimate victory. Mark is an experienced political strategist and labor organizer. He's a well-known figure in the Colorado labor movement for the last 30 years. Thank you so much for being here today. So then we have Sherry Hackett. Hackett built her career for the construction trade, serving as one of the first female union iron workers, and owned a structural steel company for over 30 years. She also served on the iconic former Denver Mayor Webb's Affirmative Action 513 ordinance. She is now the president for ACT for Colorado. Thank you for being here today. We have Jason Love, the founder and executive director of Hemp Cleans and the author of Hemp Bill 1099. So we want to thank Jason Love for being here today. One of the biggest hemp experts that there is really in the world. So it's so nice to be able to bring this type of expertise here. We're going to be growing hemp very soon. Thank you for being here. And then we have Dr. Eric Hunter. Dr. Hunter is a hemp enthusiast and expert who has testified on hemp legislation and regulation. He has served in the Industrial Hemp Phytoremediation Pilot Program Committee as Director of Research and Development for Hemp Cleans, and recently founded a professional trade organization, Rocky Mountain Hemp Association, for leaders and businesses interested in getting involved and networking in the hemp industry. Another one of our most valuable hemp advocates. So that concludes our panel, and thank you for being here today, all of you. Get started. Okay, question number 1. What will be entailed for medical marijuana centers to switch over or to add a recreational license? What are the hurdles that one must overcome? Charles, do you want to open?
Sure, I'll start. Right now it appears that one of the biggest hurdles that you're going to be facing is what's going on in your local jurisdiction. I was speaking with Warren earlier, who gave me some chilling news about what Denver is doing, and I'll let him expand on that. In Colorado Springs, we've got basically a hung city council, and we don't know what the ultimate resolution is going to be, whether they're going to allow recreational or not. The biggest, like I said, I think the biggest hurdle that everyone is going to face is what's going on in your local jurisdiction. Figure out what they're doing, how they're doing it, and make sure that you get involved, because these people are swayable, but they're only swayable if you talk to them. So you got to get out there, you've got to get organized, and you have to talk with these people before they start passing moratoriums and basically legislate you out of business like they tried the first time around.
Yeah, Charles, I would agree with you. I think that the local issue, what's happening at the local levels, is absolutely going to be crucial here. And I'll sort of leave that to Warren, I suppose, to talk about what's going on in Denver. But I think that there's the possibility that somebody could be a dual licensing, very, very attractive possibility. That, of course, comes back to what the locals are going to do. But it's ultimately, it's going to be a business decision. Do you want to put your finger further in the chest of the federal government when the federal government, at least at this point in time, has said, from a medical marijuana perspective, as long as you're not too close to a school, we're okay. So do you want to cross over that line and go purely recreational and see if there's an enforcement change in terms of policy? We just don't know that. But also from a practical perspective, everybody thinks that the sky's the limit with having recreational clients come in. The door's going to open up and there's going to be 1 million people that are going to come in from Texas and Nebraska and everybody going up I-70 to go skiing. While that may be true for the tourist trade, on the other hand, you're looking at 25% or more taxes on recreational marijuana. If I want to buy marijuana, why wouldn't I just pay for a red card, get my patient card, and go pay whatever the standard tax rate is and avoid the excise and licensing taxes? So I think that is something that's really going to lead to a significant business decision for people that want to consider whether they're going to go dual or switch over entirely.
It's like, is the grass always greener? You know?
Well, and just date-wise, Chloe, just everybody needs to be aware. First of all, this is not final in Denver yet. Denver City Council's been really clear. They took a straw poll where they want to pursue and look into opting into 64. And then they released about 17 pages of proposed rules. Just as current owners, be aware that in their current proposed rules, they will expect you to be fully licensed on a state and local level by October 1st of this year in order to be able to transition over and apply to be a recreational marijuana center, okay? Obviously, you need to take Bob's advice into account as to whether or not you even want to do that. But if you plan on doing it and you don't have a certificate of occupancy for your grow right now, you'd better get your act together quick and get a good general contractor and get this up to speed. Because the other thing our local government's proposing is to extend the moratorium on new business owners until January 1st, 2016. So if you miss that October 1st date, you're out of the game for a proposed number of years. So you need to be really aware of that and take it into plan right now. And I mean, if you haven't heard, Boulder's proposing copying the state's taxes.
Doubling.
Yeah, so you'd have the state doing 10% sales, 15% excise, on top of the city of Boulder doing an additional 10% sales, 15% excise.
And regular sales tax.
Yeah,
the little
let me get
guys.
on that, because I can hear you, Terry, but I don't think anybody else can.
I said and regular sales tax also.
Yeah, I mean, holy crap. I mean, again, getting back to why you might want to consider not going recreational, but just be really aware of what your local government's doing. Because if you're going to make that decision, make sure you're not opting yourself out for 2 or 3 years.
Now, I think that Denver will allow you to buy an existing business.
During that period of time, yes.
Yes.
That's how they're getting out of it being a moratorium.
Exactly.
If you want some fun, just go review the subcommittee meeting from a couple Mondays ago and watch when they use the M word, meaning moratorium, they'll, no, it's a transition period.
That's right, that's right.
That's partly so folks in this group don't end up suing them and saying, well, hey, you kept everybody out, because they were really clear. They're going to allow licensed transitions of existing businesses, provided they're up to speed. But
that's what I was just going to talk about. If there is a new provision where you can transfer your license, so if you're compliant on a state level in Denver, or in a state that's enacting a moratorium, for example, like Aurora, but you want to move to another city that hasn't enacted a moratorium like Denver, you can transfer your license.
But how flippin' weird is it going to be if the city of Denver says, sorry, until 2016, January 1st, the current business owners need to maintain vertical integration. But the state says, well, somewhere around October 1st, 2014, we're not going to require you to, and thus we're not going to have 70-30. So then we end up with what? The surviving Denver businesses with vertical integration, but no 70-30, which then adds another really interesting twist to the mix.
Well, in the decision to allow businesses to be bought, anybody that has a business in Denver, the value of their business just went through the roof.
Well, if they have a certificate of occupancy and are fully licensed.
Yeah, if you're fully
they're
licensed.
hopelessly in a hole and can't get their grow up to speed by October 1st, they maybe went the other way unless they're lucky enough to find somebody who has a great GC, who has the ear of zoning, and can get this stuff done in the next 4 months.
So,
Or
how
just get a
expensive?
lobbyist to change it.
Well, and I mean, what are the lobbyists on this panel? What are you guys saying as far as bans and moratoriums on a local level?
Well, currently there's 24 cities in Colorado that have enacted a recreational ban. This does not apply to industrial hemp. In some areas it does apply to, they're just continuing their ban from medical. Some of them have not banned medical but are banning recreational. And there's 18 cities that have enacted a moratorium, which is pretty easy to change. Obviously, the keystone here is Denver and Boulder. Whatever Denver does, we are pretty confident that Boulder is going to follow suit. So at this point, it's a matter of engaging on a local level in Denver. And, like other people on the panel have pointed out, to really open the system up and maybe not make it too conservative to start out with. We already have conservative steps in place on a state level. There's really no reason for cities or local municipalities to reel it back even further. All it's going to do is really stifle growth. And, that's what we're trying to, at this point, really explain, to our local leaders that in order to really grow this economy, to spur job growth, to get people, on their feet and, to make this industry work and to put Colorado on the top of the economic scale on a national level to really lead the way, we need to not be so conservative.
And I think really quickly, I think it all boils down to, from a business perspective, it all boils down to uncertainty, is that we don't know what's coming. You don't know on the legal side with the federal government and local municipalities, how your business is going to have to change, the competitive landscape, and everything everyone else on the panel has mentioned. That's the first movers on the recreational side are going to have to be very flexible, and it's going to be a real roller coaster ride, and there's going to be some significant ups and downs, and I think that's definitely what we're getting into with this.
For an industry that's already been traumatized with changing and having to move, regulations changing, how many do you think are actually going to turn? It sounds like it might be really expensive, or it could even be a really bad move turning your dispensary recreational. I mean, what if you turn it and then they decide that they're going to keep the ban? Are you going to be able to turn it back medical? And then if so, are you going to have to change all your entrances and exits and everything you just did back to the old way?
Well, I'll let these guys answer some of that, but also keep in mind that we don't know from Med yet how much you're going to have to pay for your grow fees. Because there's kind of a hybrid variation in 1317, like paying for your canopy space, meaning it doesn't appear you're necessarily going to pay per plant, but pay for what's under the lights. But I think July 1st, we're going to get some data on that and some actual numbers, because how the hell do you create a business plan without knowing how much the license is going to cost?
And I mean, that's how it is right now in the medical marijuana industry. If you have over 500 patients, then it's over $18,000 a year. So, and that will be due in a few months here, Warren. And I don't think people understand that. So when you say that they have to be licensed by October 1st, explain that a little bit.
I'm going by what David Broadwell, the Denver city attorney, said, and he appeared to be indicating you needed to be fully licensed throughout your thing, both as an MMC and OPC, or if you have a MIP, as a MIP as well, by both the state and the city by that October 1st date under the proposal, if they're going to allow you to apply for a transition over. Now, that wouldn't necessarily be so devastating if they were holding to just 1317's dates of allowing you to jump back into the game in 2014. But when you combine that with them talking about keeping you out potentially till January 1st, 2016, if you plan to go recreational and you build your model over that, that's going to be problematic.
Also, everybody needs to keep an eye on the websites because there's going to be a form that you fill out that is an intent to switch over or what you intend to do. And it's not that you're filling out your application, you just need to file this intent. If you're planning on even considering switching over to retail, you need to file that piece of paperwork, and I believe it should be out mid-July when the rules, first set of rules are out, and then we'll know more detail from there, but I just want to make everybody have a heads up on making sure that you know when that comes out so you can get that filed.
Look, this is a highly regulated industry. It's a very controversial industry. What you get is going to be a reflection. Let's not make any mistake about it. What you get is going to be a reflection of the political power of the industry, whether it be at the state level or the city council level. And I can tell you, as a representative of 25,000 workers and their families at the United Food and Commercial Workers, and affiliated with the AFL-CIO, which has another 100,000 members, the industry on its own is making a very serious mistake if they think they can influence the political process and the transition to retail marijuana on their own. This industry, if they want to be politically savvy, need to build alliances. The United Food and Commercial Workers Union is reaching out, has offered, and has been a consistent ally of this industry. So on the political level, and I can tell you this firsthand, if you take the state legislature, okay, when the state legislature vertical integration was paved in stone, right? When we went to the committee hearings on Amendment 64, we got involved. We formed alliances with various groups, with various business entities that are raising the standard of this industry. We managed to reverse the lock on vertical integration and reverse that where now non-vertical integration is a reality. We supported that because we thought it was the responsible thing to do, that it would create more jobs, that it would generate more tax revenue, and it would prevent a return to the black market. But we weren't successful because we had, and sometimes we make the mistake if we have the right lawyer or the right lobbyist, and we make a brilliant argument, we're going to reverse that. That's important, that plays a role. But vertical integration was reversed because of the political influence and power that the alliance of the parties that formed together, including Local 7. As far as federal intervention, unionization of the industry is a tremendous buffer against federal integration. I'm sorry, against federal intervention. Okay? The union, when it represents employees in the industry, raises the standards of the industry, is self-policing within the industry. That's the best protection to stabilize and legitimize the industry in the future.
Thank you. It's very true. How many people in here own a medical marijuana business? And how many of you have ever spoken with a lobbyist for your own personal, of all you've been through? And a lot of people don't know where to go. And these are the people that you want to go to. Tell them your concerns because they will help you. So, I think that's the main thing, is a lot of people don't even know where to even start because they're so overwhelmed with all these changes all the time. And even vertical integration, this may be a really good thing, because if you don't want to keep both sides of the business, which is hard, you might be able to sell one in 9 months or 2 years or whenever they enact, and it can actually change.
And if people are curious how to get involved, there's a really simple way. I know that Cannabis Business Association, for example, who's sponsoring this event, is a trade group. So trade groups are a great way to pool your resources. Eric's part of Rocky Mountain Hemp Association. That's another way that the hemp people, which both interests align a lot. You just pool your resources, decide what you want to do and what action you want to take. This has been an industry that's been highly dominated by activists, and that's a great thing. It is a great thing. But at the end of the day, you have to think that political power means a lot. And pooling your resources means a lot. And this is something I stress all the time, which is we have to stop fighting each other, and we have to start fighting the outside forces. If you don't, people think that just because Amendment 64 passed that we've made a win. It's not true. They're constantly, and Terry can attest to this, the prohibitionists they're strong, they're not giving up, they're relentless. And the more time we spend fighting each other, whether or not this business doesn't like this business, it's always petty, and it is petty. At the end of the day, in context of the larger picture, it's petty. And I'm speaking from I work in politics, I'm speaking from a political perspective. Sometimes we just have to put those differences aside and realize that there's a bigger goal here. And the bigger goal here is mass industry interest. What do we want done as an industry? Do we want to be over-regulated to the point where businesses are suffocating? No. And in order to get the regulations to a point that we want, where we have a cushion from federal interference, yet we have freedom to grow and prosper, is where political alliances like with the unions or with big investors or with the activists all have to come together and agree. So that would be my suggested advice as to how to get involved.
That was awesome.
Chloe, to your point, to your question, I would just add one thing. I mean, I think it would make sense to spend money on lobbying efforts, specifically to hedge your bets on the dual licensing aspect. Because that would, in effect, attempt at least to minimize your risk if one side of the business, recreational versus medical, doesn't pan out or gets banned or something like that, or somehow the feds change their policy on one side or the other. So to me, that's certainly where you should direct your efforts and your attention, amongst all the other things that were said. But I think it's a really, really important piece of this.
I also have to agree with them, whether you join Act for Colorado or one of the other associations, when you're working with a larger group of people, your voice gets larger. But it doesn't hurt for each and every one of you to go down to that Capitol, because we're down there every day, we're making things change, and it takes a lot of effort. But they also like to hear from the business person, so when session begins again, make sure you're involved with your association, but also go to the Capitol and write letters. Those things all have impact.
Right, I just want to add too that, sometimes people have stereotypes and fears about the union. Put those stereotypes and fears behind you. Okay? The union is not an intrusion in your business. The union is going to add value to your business. It's going to help protect your business. It's going to help stabilize and legitimize it. I can tell you, when we've gone to state legislators, we've managed to influence legislation and regulations in this industry by showing the labor management contracts that we've negotiated with some employers, which shows that these employers are raising labor standards, treating workers with respect and dignity, providing affordable health care if they can. By showing that's what's won support of many state legislators. In the city council in Denver, you can go to, this isn't theory, this is real life experience. When there have been some lobbyists that have gone to city council members and have asked for certain things, they've asked, well, what does the union think about this? Are you pro-union or you're anti-union? And some of the city council people, almost half who are out of the labor movement, are really, frankly, disgusted working with owners in this industry, before this industry has even really taken off, who are basically engaged in the same type of union busting as a Walmart, which is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. We want to say to you, we want to form a partnership with the industry. We add value to the industry. We think that together we can really help this industry solidify itself and grow. We want to work together. We've been there for you in the bans. We've been there for you in the tax issues. We can be there now in implementing a really respected and dignified rollout of the retail marijuana industry in Colorado.
When we were talking about paying attention to lobbyists and the ability to serve both patients and the recreational consumers, like Bob was talking about here, guys, we're talking about physical separation, meaning walls and separate exits. versus virtual separation, meaning keeping track of what's going on and who you're selling to. With the big hitch being, the state's not crazy if you're going to use this model with virtual separation if you choose to serve patients under the age of 21. So, I mean, that's what we're talking about, and that's what you need to be looking at, lobbying both the locals for, because we're kind of done with the state, that they've thrown it into their lap to allow it to happen if your local government will allow it to happen.
I just want to say, if you want to make a difference, then the first step is to show up. And I go to a lot of the city council and county commissioners meetings now, but the state legislature is over. And there, to be honest with you, there aren't very many people there. I mean, there aren't a lot of people there speaking up for our side. I mean, you'll hear the statistics where, you know, 50, 60, 70% of their population, depending on the area, have voted yes in favor of Amendment 64, but those people are not showing up. They are not the ones that are calling, they're not the ones that are emailing. So the first thing you need to do is show up. And I would challenge each and every one of you to tomorrow morning, when you get up, before you do anything else, is find out who your city council member is, who your county commissioner is, and make the phone call. Start building the relationship. Start developing the relationship.
I mean, you know what? Judy's right over there in the taxi cab building, and Albus Brooks is over here on Welton next to Cervantes, and what? Charlie Brown's next to the Saucy Noodle. I mean, don't expect them to be there and take your appointment, but certainly, when you walk in, they're...
Say I'm a dispensary owner and I'm really busy and I've got, you know, my grow, I've got to move, and what can I do if I don't want to feel bad, but can I pay somebody to be there for me? What other options do I have if I don't have the time? Because I know a lot of these business owners don't. And, you know, they definitely want to have representation. And it's true, because the DUID bill was fought until the last session when there was only 5 people there, and the people that showed up sat there all day, so they wanted to go smoke by about 5 o'clock by the time they were actually heard, and we only had a few people who were really high, who'd been there all day talking, and it just didn't look that good for us. So, you know,
Yeah.
I mean...
And you know, I want to stress something. Like, I will be the last person to denounce the importance of citizen activism. I think it's absolutely important. It's crucial. However, we've seen this last legislative session, that's quite the tongue twister, a lot of sneaky tricks. And, you know, I don't know, not to get into the argument, but you saw it with the gun legislation, you know, where they pulled a lot of legislative maneuvers. They did it with the DUID bill. They did it with the repeal measure that they tried to add on to the tax bill. You know, and these are things that unless you're there all day at the Capitol, building relationships with legislators, which is really important, which is what lobbying groups do, and paying attention to what's going on, you won't catch it. I mean, if you want me to tell you what happened at the repeal measure, I will. They pulled it at the last minute. They pulled it at 8 o'clock at night. All of a sudden, we're waiting for the tax bill. This is 3 days left with session. It takes 3 days to pass a bill. 3 days, that's all it takes. So they knew with 3 days left in a session, they could introduce a bill at the last minute, and they could pass it by ramming it through without giving 24-hour notice for public testimony, which is usually required, but in the last days of session, those rules are suspended. So 8 o'clock at night, on like a Friday night, a Thursday night, when people are at home with their kids, they're not at the Capitol. No one's at the Capitol except lobbyists and legislators.
So what you don't know can really hurt you.
Yeah, and you know, and they pulled this at the last minute. We're making phone calls. We're getting people there to testify. You know, we're pulling people in, and there's only a few of us. I mean, the group I represented, which at the time was MPP and then the Colorado Hemp Association, but really, I think Meg was there as well. But you know, there's very few people there who are interested and or stop working to stop this. We got it killed. Don't get me wrong. We got it killed, but it was because we aligned with we made our connections, and we had a lot of powerful people who wanted to see this bill get passed and honor the intention of Amendment 64. And thank God for those people, because otherwise we would have an unconstitutional repeal measure on the ballot this year. You know, after all the hard work we put through. And this is what I mean when I say the prohibitionists aren't going to stop. They're not going to stop, but they're going to keep pulling these dirty tricks. And you have to have people with political savvy and with connections and who understand how this business works and know the legislative tricks. They know that the rules get suspended, for example, in the last day of legislation. They know the kind of amendments that you can put on. They know the kind of how voting procedures work, who understand the constituent makeup of certain people's districts, who lives in a red district, who lives in a blue district, who lives in a purple district, how many dispensaries are in that district, you know? How, you know, the numbers of what passed in each legislator, representative, senator's district, and city council districts. Like, that's, you know, we do that for you guys. And it's because we believe in the movement. But the way to get it done more effectively, like, you know, like a lot of people have pointed out, is to combine forces. And to, you know, to never give up. To never think that we can sit back and put our feet on the table and go, oh, well, that amendment passed, we're good. No. This fight will continue to happen. I think one of my favorite quotes was right after the repeal measure was killed, which was one of the greatest hours ever. You know, the Senate president who led the charge on that, you know, made a quote to the press that said, well, you know, because they tied it to the tax measure. Essentially, they were blackmailing the industry, saying, you better vote for these taxes, or your amendment's going bye-bye, your freedom is going bye-bye. And support the taxes or not, I actually happen to support the tax measure. The fact that they treat us differently than any other industry, I mean, what other industry goes out there and advocates to tax itself? Do you see oil and gas out there throwing ads up on the TV saying, yes, increase gas prices by 10%, you know? No one does that.
Let's talk about those taxes.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
Should we support
How do we
that?
set these taxes? Okay, as part of this discussion, none of the stuff I saw took into consideration the Department of Revenue statistics for the 2012 medical marijuana sales. No, they released it in March. It was on the DOR. But how was that not part of it? And how does that not make me put on my tinfoil hat and say there were DOR people as part of these meetings who never disclosed, oh, we have all these huge sales figures, and by the way, if we institute a 10% and a 15%, you're going to result in Med having a budget of, you know, $150 million. Well, that certainly would seem to pay for stuff.
Well, the original tax discussion was brought up during the Amendment 64 task force hearings. I believe the 15 and 15 came out of that recommendation. So those of you who followed along, I don't think DOR would have had their numbers in January yet. So, I mean, I'm a conspiracy theorist.
They were on the website around March 10th. But I mean, we came this close to having 64 repealed without any discussion of what the hell. We have all these huge numbers. And if we look at those taxes, they seem to be very substantial. If there's any expansion on the numbers we already had.
So do you think as an industry that we should support this tax bill? That's our question.
Yes. Listen, I understand. No one wants to be treated differently. What I was going to say earlier is, you know, the Senate president made a quote like, well, they're just going to come back next year and, you know, lobby that their taxes get lowered. And my opinion is, yes, we're going to come back and act like every other industry out there, whether it's oil and gas, whether it's agriculture, you know, whether it's the alcohol industry, and say, please, can you lower our taxes? That would be nice.
Alcohol wouldn't have had this happen.
No. I mean, actually, when the prohibition ended on alcohol, their taxes were very high.
This high?
This is higher than
Because this is higher than anything ever from what I've looked at. I mean, like 4 times, you know, I mean, way higher. And if somebody's not just going to run it into the black market, and then we have holders saying, oh, we're going to double this, holy crap. I mean, I'm sorry, Chloe, but I'm a libertarian. I'm not going to vote for a tax increase.
Considering what other states are looking at, Washington was looking at a 50% sales tax. I think we're doing okay. I mean, you're talking about a 10% sales tax to start off with, just on retail marijuana, and then a 15% excise, which is on a wholesale product, which
Plus
a lot of
the city
that is
tax.
consumed into the price.
Plus the city taxes, and we don't know what they are yet.
Well, if they do the city tax, though, which a lot of municipalities may not do, they lose their kickback. That 10% includes a kickback to the local governments.
Well, they don't. Is Boulder taking that into consideration when they talk about a 10% local tax plus an additional 15% 15% excise tax.
Boulder has a high consumption rate, so they're probably hedging their bets that they're going to get more city revenue out of that. But if you're talking about smaller municipalities, I'm sure they're going to be content to keep the kickback.
I guess, but then we're looking at a $200 ounce becoming a $250, $260 ounce before we even talk about anything else, and that's not good.
The tax ensures that the industry maintains its political support and public support, and then you build a political constituency base, for instance, like in the education establishment, which is going to benefit from that tax. So the tax is important in stabilizing the industry and maintaining support from various political and electoral sectors. But the other important piece is getting that tax passed. If opponents of this industry would love for the tax not to pass, because then they can mount another effort to reverse the referendum, which is possible. The elected officials have frankly don't have the confidence that the industry has the political infrastructure in order to get this tax passed, so they're looking elsewhere. They're looking at groups that have the political experience to put 1,000 people on the ground to counter the attacks on the industry, and who can knock on doors for months and months, and bring also the other political resources. So while, yeah, it seems like an excessive tax, I think we got to take a look at it just like we do with alcohol. That's what maintains.
And don't we have like the 5th lowest alcohol tax in all of the nation, but we're going to have the highest tax ever for anything on this?
And in the tax
there's taxes and there's reasonable taxes.
But if these taxes don't pass, here's what's going to happen. Here's the consequences. One, you're going to piss off the legislators, and then they're going to come back next legislative session with even more onerous regulations. 2, your licensing fees will go through the roof. If you think they're high now, just wait until they need to fund enforcement without the taxes. 3, there are a lot of people, as Senator Stedman once said, a lot of piggies lining up to the trough for this little slush fund. This is just a fact of the matter of politics, and it's for the education funding, and for the training funding that DPHE and law enforcement are going to be using. That's going to be taken directly from these tax funds, and those are just going to be bigger enemies that we're going to be building because they're not going to get the funding that they need for the education and for the. And I'm not saying it's necessarily a good thing, but we can always come back and ratchet these taxes down. The nice thing about Tabor is we have a ceiling.
It's been ratcheted down in any other industry.
Right, and in any other industry, especially when alcohol came up from the black market and turned over, they decided to keep it low in order to drive the black market out. And these guys, no matter how many times we tried to explain to them to keep this tax a little bit lower, they did not do it. And so therefore, it's up to the vote because of the Tabor law. But what happens when it doesn't pass? It goes back to the general fund to cover it, correct?
Yes, and then they're going to ratchet up the licensing fees. So if you think you're paying $5,000 now to register, you're going to be paying $10,000,
Before the next
$15,000.
legislative session, they're going to do that?
They don't need the DOR doesn't need legislative approval to ratchet up
Well,
the
except
fees.
they need a year for your license to expire to require you to renew.
But they can still set the fees for new entrants into the market.
Yeah, and then maybe we can have this discussion with the revenue from MMJ as part of the discussion, rather than just making up huge tax numbers.
So
I agree with Samantha. If look, it's a historic precedent, the establishment of Amendment 64. Okay, that you made history. The tax is necessary to maintain the political support of your allies. If this tax doesn't pass, those allies will be put in a position where they will have to oppose the Amendment 64.
We are still the people, and we still have a voice, and those people that are on City Council and on the House and in the Senate still work for us. And that's why each and every one of us need to become more active, and we need to get out there and write the letters to explain to them how real business works, because what they're going to do is kill this business if they continue to put higher tax, just so they can regulate it illegal. It's not going to work. The thing that they have to do, even if it's something where they pass this in November, we have to all be active to get it lowered, or else we're all not going to survive this.
Okay, so what are the immediate investment and business opportunities for people interested in adult use marijuana? What about industrial hemp? What are the immediate investment and business opportunities that are going to allow us to, I mean, okay, this is a little negative for me. What's good about all of this? Besides the taxes, and what opportunities do we have as business owners or current MMCs, or as somebody who's just new getting into the business?
Well, we focused on this panel mostly from the dispensary owner's point of view and retail stores, people that are going to go after those licenses, but there's a whole other industry out there. So as what we've seen, and other people in the industry will tell you this too, is some of the best opportunities are on the ancillary side. You've got, like all of us up here, you know, lawyers, media companies, advertising companies, all the services that you know, the vendors that provide services to these businesses, they're going to have, the retail shops are going to have the hardest time. And that's not to say that the ancillary companies have smooth sailing. They're going to have clients that are going through, you know, some pretty serious fluctuations and turbulence. But again, if some of you are wondering how to get in this industry, think of anything a regular business would need, and you can apply it to this industry. Now, a lot of companies exist that service the medical marijuana industry, but you know, if you can develop a specialty in something, we know a lot of people move into the state from other states that have a background in a different profession. I just talked to a guy the other day. He's an HVAC specialist, so he wants to start a company here that would focus just on the recreational marijuana business. If you can develop a specialty in what your background is, I'm a journalist. I'm in this industry. I don't touch the plant. You know, you can carve out an niche for yourself.
I agree, and that is what is so amazing, is that this industry literally is like Walt Disney when they first drew Mickey Mouse on a piece of paper. I mean, you could build an industry doing anything, and I do encourage a lot of people to always have kind of a second option as well, even as medical marijuana business owners. You know, just because you're already building a brand, make that option. It's true. Don't just put all your eggs in one basket. You know.
You know, one thing that you brought up was hemp. And that's a whole other arena, but the opportunities there are, as I like to compare, it's like the telephone, the car, and the internet being invented all at the same time. We can look at this from a filter perspective, we can look at this from a food perspective, and fiber, and then as well as fuel down the road. Of course, we need to wait for that. But the opportunities are tremendous. Right now, we don't have to worry about all the other regulations and licensing that the medical cannabis side of things have to focus on. So for example, you may have heard of hempcrete. It's a great building material. There are other opportunities out there in the building industry. It could be biocomposites for structural wallboard. It could be animal bedding. It could be fuel pellets. We can mix that with the beetle kill wood that's already being turned into fuel. But the opportunities go way beyond that. Asphalt companies are very interested in hemp oil. And the list goes on in terms of technical applications. Automotive companies are very interested. Currently, if you don't know this, BMW, Ford, Mercedes, Kestrel, and Lotus all use hemp in their vehicles, whether it's for the ceiling panels, structural material in the hood or front end of the vehicle, it could be door panels, and so on and so forth. So if we were to really open the door in hemp, it's really something that can change not only the state, but our country. So being that we passed, with the help of Sam and Eric and Linda, and so many more people, being that we passed SB 13241 this year, it means that farmers can grow commercial industrial hemp for all these applications. And so what that does mean for you guys is it's an opportunity possibly to bring other investments in without the guidelines that you have to fall between or under with the medical cannabis industry.
I agree with everything Jason said on the hemp side. On the cannabis side, from an investment perspective, that gets tricky because there are people that are going to need money. The problem is matching up those people with investors. So the industry is still very immature in that sense. It's growing up a little bit. You're seeing some new funds develop. Most of them are on this ancillary side I was mentioning. You have a crowdfunding site that's developing where individuals can put small amounts of money into marijuana-related projects. But if you're looking for money, the key challenge is still going to be matching up with the investors. And if you are an investor looking for the retail shop owners or growers, even edibles companies, you're going to have to meet them probably at events like this because there isn't a lot of networks out there and opportunities to get involved on that level. So it's going to be a lot of person-to-person and networking that leads to investments.
And then, of course, we have the residency issue, which is
right,
a lot of
there's
the...
a whole huge legal issue with this too that we're not quite sure how that's going to shake out.
Yeah.
Investments, and that's problematic without having, banking in the industry. One of the areas that United Food and Commercial Workers is working on is actively working in Washington, D.C. One, of course, is to legalize, recreational marijuana at the federal level, and also to establish legal banking at the state level. And we're in a unique position because we are a national organization with 1.5 million members across the United States, with dozens of lobbyists in D.C. So we are working. One of our priorities, or one of our major priorities, is to bring banking, legitimate, legalized banking, to the industry that can be implemented at the state level. But in order to do that, we need to have members. We need to have a constituency that supports that and that gives us the moral authority to say that we're speaking on behalf of large members of folks that are in this industry.
Wonderful, thank you. And that's what's great about the union is they can put so many workers on the floor too, and that's huge. Like you said, when a lot of people show up actively at these legislative sessions, that's something that they can provide. That's amazing. Dr. Hunter, why don't you tell us a little bit about, can we make money in hemp? Is there money in it or not? As far as the business opportunities, because yeah, it's safer, but the safer stuff isn't always where the money's at, right?
That's right. There is money in hemp, and the Canadians have shown that is a profitable crop. And what we're really looking at is the margin that can be earned on the processing as being one of the drivers for the industry and the investment. And the Canadian model has shown that by coming up with new and innovative ways to work hemp oil into food products, they can build a brand which is growing at about 10% per year and currently accounts for about $500 million per year in sales to this country alone, not to mention their own market in other countries that the Canadians are selling their hemp food products to.
What about for the manufacturing? We have these houses. My understanding is the building department is the one who didn't want hemp years ago, like 1920s. Does that mean we could just grow hemp and make products out of hemp? Is there a timeline for when we can get into the business? How would it work if I was, is that something I could talk to you or Jason about? How's that work? Sam, how's that work?
Okay.
Do you want me to take this?
Senate Bill 241 will allow registration for processors and farmers when the process of rulemaking is complete, which is no later than March 1st of next year. We're hoping that the rules are complete well before then. So the earliest theoretical date, assuming that the rules are complete, will be January 1st of next year. And so that's coming up quickly. And so we have about 30 farmers that are participating in the phytoremediation pilot program who are gathering valuable data on yields and water usage, and that will prove valuable to anybody that's interested in the agronomics of the business.
And we had a story today in our publication about publicly traded companies in other industries that are now eyeing the medical marijuana and cannabis, recreational cannabis industries, and they come from different backgrounds. So you can see how they're looking at this. There's a company that is thinking it can adapt its product to pets. It might be some kind of cannabis-infused medicine. There's a food company that's focusing on seafood, but now it's like, we deal with food, maybe we can make edibles. And you've got a bunch of companies, again, that have a specialty in something else that are looking for how that fits in this industry. And the possibilities on that end are pretty limitless if you think about it.
And speaking of hemp, I just want to say that we actually kind of took one step forward and one step back today on the federal level. Jared Pohl has introduced an amendment to the Farm Bill that would have legalized hemp, at least for research purposes, and it passed. Yay, it passed. But the Farm Bill failed. So that's why I said one step forward and one step back. But at least that's ahead of the Senate, because the Senate didn't pass the amendment for hemp there. So anyway, so we're working it, and like Sam had said, it's important to connect with the people that have the connections.
So say you're a hemp farmer, you come plant a nice hemp field right next, maybe within 3 to 5 miles of my marijuana field. How's that going to work? Is that going to flower all my plants out? Do people need to be concerned as they're expanding with these OPC facilities, land, and all this greenhouse, that they don't pick the wrong spot?
That's another one of those opportunities. I think the HVAC system concept is going to really address that. So if you don't already have one, even without hemp, if you don't have a HEPA filter on your intake system, or you don't have a plenum system in place, I would kind of wonder about what you're really driving for here. Because we know that this plant needs to be cultivated and controlled in such a very specific way. So I take that even further, that with industrial hemp, what we're looking at is, obviously most of that's going to be grown in the agricultural realm. And so a lot of those areas are far away from most of the grows. However, if you are within that 11-mile radius, which is the average number that we're coming across, although I've seen higher numbers if you're close to the sea, which fortunately not. But yeah, it could become a problem. And so what you guys need to think about is what steps you can take to mitigate the air quality coming into your facilities. I know there are some outdoor grows out there, but from what I've looked at just as a quick survey, it doesn't look like that's going to be much of an issue. Eric, you might have another.
Well, and what we might have as a de facto zoning, if you look at where 64 passed, it passed in the mountain towns and in the urban corridor. Now, if you look at where it failed, it's a ring around the states that, or around the state that borders the prohibition states. So we might see some counties that ban social use stores and possibly even grows if they have the capability to do that. And we would like to educate the county commissioners on the benefits of having industrial hemp growing in their county. And that might help to make some peace between the industry that wants to grow it for medical or social use versus industrial use, such as fiber and seed for food products.
And counties are already looking into this. I know I've spoken with a few already who they're looking to basically word ordinances, or how they ask flat out, how can we ban recreational marijuana grows in dispensaries yet still incorporate industrial hemp? And so the answer is, if anyone lives in rural districts or knows anyone who sits on city council or in the county commissioner's office, if this comes up, is yes, it's already constitutionally defined as separate. So this is in our constitution, so it is absolutely legal for a county to ban recreational or medical use marijuana, but still allow for the growth of industrial hemp. And we've just already, I know that the co-chairs of the Agriculture Committee have, I think, come to a decision on who they're going to appoint to the Hemp Advisory Board, which is a group of people from various aspects in the hemp industry advising the Department of Agriculture on their rules. And one of them I know is a very experienced biogeographer and agronomist, and so hopefully he'll be giving really sage advice on, incorporating GPS systems, and, I think this is going to be a very advanced, and I think Colorado is going to lead the way on how to cultivate hemp and how to map it geographically, which is going to be awesome. Exciting.
It's exciting, but didn't we just describe a system where we're going to allow hemp but ban marijuana. And I guess that's the part where I run into that problem that the best interest of some of these groups isn't the same best interest of the other groups, and then I have trouble all staying on the same page.
Well, Jason, what's the difference between hemp and marijuana? Ganja?
4 inches and 4 feet. So in other words, industrial hemp grows like wheat, very close to each other, unless we're breeding for seed. But you guys, or a lot of you guys who are growing medical, grow in this 4-foot radius, or even bigger, I've seen. And so the quick way to say it is the 4 inches, 4 feet. But a lot of the farmers really are concerned about THC levels. And so the way I talk to them is, if you want to get high off of hemp, you have to roll up a telephone pole and smoke the whole thing. But I guarantee you that first drag, and I think maybe Eric may have tried this when he was younger. No. You get a really big headache, a major headache. I didn't try this either. It's probably why a lot of people come and say, yeah, I tried marijuana once, but I get a really big headache. It's probably that ditchweed they pulled out of, some farm. So there are other explanations. The THC level is going to be below the 0.3% in the commercial growth for the R&D programs. That will be a little bit different. We still have to see what the regulations are going to be like. But in terms of the technical, visual aspect of what a medical plant looks like versus hemp, hemp is going to be this scraggly plant, right? And you're also going to see, like in this case, it's a male plant. And so obviously you guys who are growing medical plants don't want them. These things are going to be prevalent in the field. You'll see them as bright yellow right before they release all their pollen. And so obviously if you're breeding this for medical use and you see that hemp, or for commercial industrial use, and you see that male plant, you're going to know that's not going to reach a THC level that would be required or desired by consumers. The other side of it is, you guys don't want seed. And so you want that sensibilia, if you will, without seeds. And so a hemp field is meant to produce seed. So there's going to be a lot of differences. That said, I like to always share this, and Linda really brought this whole conversation with Rocky Mountain, with the Colorado State Police, as well as the Mounties up in Canada. I guess it was about 6 years ago or so. But they had a conversation, and in reality, a lot of other law enforcement around the world, they want hemp, because just as the pollen issue becomes an issue, or becomes a question, that they see pollen from the hemp plant can actually reduce their recreational grows. So I think that's the biggest difference there.
Does anybody know, because do you guys know how far, if I wanted to grow weed, how far, and be in a greenhouse without necessarily tricky filters, how far away do I have to be from a hemp field to make sure that 0.3 THC doesn't become what mine becomes?
Well, if you live on the, it depends where you are. If you live on the downward side, then you're probably in trouble. If you live upwind, then I wouldn't worry about it. I've come across the numbers of about 11 miles, 7 to 11 miles. But here's something that's also interesting about hemp. You may be able to use hemp as a buffer crop. So we've seen evidence that people actually plant hemp around their other crops to prevent pollen from contaminating or coming through. So sort of like a natural fence.
You mean like other hemp pollen, or
other female hemp, not the male hemp.
So 7 to 11 miles, would you agree with that?
I think that sounds reasonable.
That's kind of far.
We know in Europe they're able to predict the weather patterns.
That's what I heard thrown around too. But my problem was it was like through Facebook friends in Australia and Spain. So what was that?
Eric pointed out a really important aspect of this. Is it seems like there'll be almost de facto zoning that will prevent a lot of these issues from coming up. But if you actually look at zoning issues themselves, you'll start to see that the ag land is really separate from most other properties. So I don't think that's going to be much of, honestly, I mean, right now, I don't think it's going to be much of an issue. And coming from me, by the way, I'm also a medical marijuana patient, and that is a very important topic for me. So it's not like I'm out here to, promote hemp and destroy the crops. That's not what I'm trying to say here. So don't get me wrong on that one.
Right. Okay. Okay, so how do we as an industry deal with the large influx of outside money and investors wanting to get involved in Colorado? Yeah, like the Microsoft guy.
It would be great, honestly, my comment would be great if there was some way we can draw these people to the same sort of network. Because I honestly, I'm approached by people at all sorts of events like this. And it's a little weird. Chloe, you were at one at Hood Lab where the gentleman there approached the conversation. And so it's a little sort of sketcy sometimes. Sometimes I think these guys are just like sneaky people.
Okay, and with the recent major arrest in marijuana, 71 indictments, should we be worried about the state cracking down on legitimate businesses? Now, we all know that there are basically these operational licenses that have been going for a long time, and now the Med is looking at all of these businesses because they're going to have to switch over to recreational. So all this stuff that we haven't been looking at could now be seen. And things that we potentially, I mean, reading this case, I was a little worried because there, I mean, $1 to $20,000, 1 pound to 20 pounds. There's a lot of things just left for, you know, misunderstanding. What do you guys think about that? I mean, is this just the beginning?
Well, I've got a saying on top of my computer. It says DBADA, don't be a dumbass. That's really what it boils down to. I mean, everyone who's in this industry who has survived this long understands how to play inside of the rules. It should not come as a shock to anyone sitting here that someone decided that they were going to play outside of the rules. And that's why we got Med. That's, you know, the fact that it happened, yeah, it should probably send a little bit of a chill up your spine saying, well, maybe we need to tighten up our procedures. We need to make sure that we understand where our money's coming from, what we're doing with it, where the money's going to, all of those things. But when I read the thing, I wasn't shocked because any industry, pick one, there's going to be someone who wants to color outside of the lines because they think that they're not going to get caught, or because they think that they're going to make a lot of money doing it, or they're just dumbasses. So I guess what I want to say is that just don't be one of those people. You know what the rules are, you know how to play inside the lines, and there's money inside the lines, so why push it? That's why I always, but it's written on top of my computer, DBADA.
I would agree wholeheartedly. We cover the industry from a national perspective, and the states with the most regulations have the least amount of intervention from the authorities, local or federal. Have you ever heard of a crackdown in Maine? Well, no, they have, they have pretty good regulations out there. All the new East Coast states are going that way as well. So how
Didn't they just find
here,
the Maine guy was using pesticides he wasn't supposed to use?
Well, that's my point, is that you will get in trouble, to Charles's point, if you're not playing by the rules. So if we haven't seen really anyone in the state, correct me if I'm wrong, who was forced out of business that was operating, that was completely in compliance, except if maybe they were closer than 1,000 feet, which was there's a state-federal issue with that. But the state has shown that it is sympathetic. So on a state level, I can't imagine that we're going to see this wave of crackdowns unless it involves the sketchy operators that are out there. There are people out there that aren't playing by the rules now.
Do you think there's just a lot of business owners who lost their bank account, had to move their operations, maybe don't know how to manage money that well? I mean, because obviously, and that's no excuse, by the way. That's not going to be an excuse, but I mean, there could be serious consequences for just even being scared that you might have too much cash at your store and taking it somewhere else and things like that. There are certain ways to manage money. I know we have, Jim Marty here. There's many people who can help you manage cash and cash books. Bob is, a business attorney. Ask somebody if your books are not correct, because it's really important that you have a system and that you know exactly what that system is. And Warren, this indictment's dated back to 2010.
Yeah, and that's what we've been mumbling about back here behind the scenes, is that, what we're looking at, apparently, they stopped investigating in 2012. Because they were like, okay, we got enough. Well, hopefully. Rip fake wood. And I guess we're just going to see.
So, well, anybody else?
Well, I was going to say, we were kind of joking, that I kind of see this as a bright spot. I know a lot of people see it as a dark spot for the industry, but I see it as a bright spot because, one, it certainly legitimizes your industry if they're going after you for fraud, because then that means you're legal. You know, how can you defraud people in an illegal industry? And two, it shows that enforcement works. They caught it. They caught it, and that's the important thing, which means the more that the enforcement division can weed out the bad actors, the more the good participants can prosper. And I think that's a really good thing for the industry. I really do. I think
it is, if we can stick to the numbers we have now. If they drop 20, 30, 40 of these on our head, the PR is going to be a little bit different.
What does the landscape look like for marijuana and hemp on a federal level? I know we already talked about that a little bit, but let's just discuss that just a little bit more. As far as the 1080E, I know you said we just passed the hemp today. I know Chris Walsh of the MMJ Business Daily is working on a national level with people all over. I mean, how is this? Do we have huge support on a federal level? How long do you guys think it's going to be before we really push that?
I can't speak to the legislation specifically, but I can say, and this goes to the point a moment ago, I mean, the most interest I've seen in terms of investment in this industry is on the hemp side, to Jason's point. I've seen people all over the place coming in and want to invest in hemp. And those dollars are coming from all over the place, and certainly that's what I've seen personally. Because I think from a practical perspective, the medical side of things, or the recreational side of things, there's some growth possibility, obviously, but not for new business, I don't think, because of the practical limitations on zoning, etc. But I guess the reason I wanted to jump in here, and this goes to Jason's point as well, I was reading something in the paper today about this committee hearing at the federal level about policies amendment on hemp. And there were some senators that, or pardon me, some representatives that were concerned about how do you distinguish between a hemp plant and a marijuana plant with higher THC.
I was going to ask Jason if he would train the DEA for us.
This is actually fascinating. So there's Representative Steve King, a Republican from Iowa. And not our Steve King. Not our Steve King, different one. He says there has been success in splicing a gene into hemp that allows it to emit a fluorescent glow. Nice. Now this is what it'll solve energy crisis. So that's how you can distinguish. Just look at the fluorescent lights.
Well, I think this is where education of our legislative leaders is really important. I can't speak yet. I can't speak affirmatively as to what Representative King was referring to, but if I had to take a stab at the dark with fluorescent lights lighting my way, I would assume that hemp registers and the cannabis plant registers a certain heat signal with infrared technology. So when you have planes doing like infrared sweeps over fields, they can actually tell, like they use it to tell where marijuana is hiding in cornfields and stuff. And so I think I don't know, Dr. Hunter or Jason might be more versed in this than I am, but I think that's maybe what you're talking about. But again, I think it just goes to point out that, you know, this is where we need to have accurate and precise talking points and really making a big effort, not just to say, vote this way on legislation, but to really educate our leaders and to make sure that they know what they're talking about when they go up to the stand and espouse their ridiculous beliefs, or awesome beliefs.
This comes back to what you brought up earlier, is geofencing. So we actually manage our other crops, like corn and tomatoes, with GPS locations. And so, for example, we know this big company called Monsanto is out there. How do you think they control their crops? How do they prove that their crop is here versus over on this other poor farmer who they just destroyed? That said, there's geofencing. It's GPS coordinates of the field, so they know where this stuff is going to be located. If it's outside that fence, it's not hemp. So honestly, what we're talking about with these, when we hear these things, it's just a distraction. It's complete nonsense. It's not even non-science. It's just ridiculousness. And so if we sit down with people like that, we can educate them and say, you know, we already have this GPS system that we can use, and we're using, and we use for everything else. Why don't we just use it for cannabis or hemp?
And I'd like to add to Chloe's question, there's a growing disconnect between federal lawmakers and the people and the states. Poll after poll and state after state, even in the South where there are no MMJ states, has shown most cases overwhelming support for particularly medical cannabis and hemp. And also now we're starting to see, beyond 50% support for recreational marijuana too. So the people are behind this movement. There's been polls that say, should the government back off the industry in states as long as everyone's complying, and the public says yes. So the people have come around in the last couple of years specifically across the country. The federal lawmakers, that they seem, there's some of them who are really entrenched in their old ways and their old thoughts. And we haven't heard from the Obama administration yet about recreational marijuana industry and how they're going to respond. And then you've still got this nebulous area with medical, where the federal government isn't helping the industry. That we're getting to the point where almost half the states in the country are there. I think we're at about 20 now this year. Maryland and New Hampshire is about to sign it. New York, it's in the Senate today. And we're not sure where that stands. They might extend the session a day or two. But, and Illinois passed it, and it's in front of the governor. So you're seeing the dominoes fall across the country. There's no going back on the medical side, and not on the recreational either. That might take some time to play out across the country. But you have other states now that are considering recreational, and we'll probably see one or two next year. So the people are behind this industry. A lot of states are behind the industry. It's when the federal government's going to come around. That's the big question. And some people will tell you we're at the tipping point and they're about to come around, and other people will say it's going to be years.
Well, and at the risk of Adam coming out of the kitchen and smacking me in the face, on July 2nd, up here at Jake's Restaurant, which is, if you keep driving this way, I don't know.
It's really close, like down there for like 20
it's hard for me.
seconds.
It's where Downing meets Walnut, wherever it merges. Jared Polis will actually be there and is having an industry fundraiser. I think it's what, Denver Leaf and Sean Coleman and Andrew Feinstein and others are hosting it. So that's a really unique opportunity for you folks to go down there and get a second to chat with a
And I think it's $35 recommended donation, which, what is that, like a few, like nothing. I mean, for some people it's make or break, but I mean, just a little bit, it's going to go a long way. And I think Jared Polis has been such a strong advocate. I mean, he has been awesome on this issue, and he really listens to the people. And I've been so honored to work with his office on a federal level, and he's also done a lot of work here in the state as well. And so I think it would behoove all of us to really get involved. That's another aspect, not just lobbying efforts, but to get involved in these fundraisers and let these politicians know that we have a direct influence on them.
How do we find out about it?
The Cannabis Business Association is going to be posting a bunch of stuff on their Facebook, but you can always go to the Cloverleaf page too. I mean, I post about every industry group and, our events, like if we know about them. You can also check, I'm sure, all of these different industry group websites. Maybe we should put those up on the Cannabis Business Association or, those events, make sure everybody knows how to get to them.
It is important to venture outside of the cannabis community and actually talk to other people. I mean, we do a lot of preaching to the choir. We all get together and we rant and rave and grumble and celebrate and whatever, but we aren't the ones that need to be educated. We aren't the public that needs to be educated. We're already there, so we need to start talking to the general public and talking to these legislators. And in my experience, going to these events, like a town hall or a fundraiser or something like that is really valuable, because I find that I make really good connections then, because they're not as guarded as they are maybe at the Capitol. And then, for example, the other night
we're talking
I went to
U.S., we're not talking Colorado, too.
Right.
Just so everybody's clear.
Don't go to the, the Capitol.
I hear it called Senator this, or there's he's Congressman Polis for the United States,
So,
which is like a big deal.
if you really, another good way to get involved is go to their website. Go to your U.S. Senator's website, go to your U.S. Representative's website, as well as your local ones. I know who they are. Get on their mailing lists for when they have fundraisers, so you know when they're hosting them. I mean, yeah, it might be a little bit of spam for a while, but at least you know when they're there. And then if it's $1,000 a table, get 5 of your friends, 5 of your business associates to get together, combine interests, buy a table, and then get that guy's ear. And you know, and we just did that recently, and it was great. We went to a fundraiser for Mark Udall, and there were at least 6 representatives from the cannabis industry, and it was awesome. And you know, one of the first things, because they saw us in the room, they addressed, you know, recreational marijuana on a federal level, and you know, it's kind of cool to see that that's the first issue that they address.
And when they address it, don't offer them cannabis or anything. You know, they're not there yet. We really need to be careful because they're very influential and still a little scared, so we need to make sure we know the difference.
I would like to also echo what they said about getting out and meeting the people in your district, in your community, and talking to them about it, because the more we spread the wealth and let them know what we know, the more it's going to make people understand, because you got to understand that people were pushed with a scare factor, you know, and so in order to lift that fear, we've got to educate them to make them more aware of what it is. But I'd also like to thank each and every business owner that stuck their neck out on the line to go into this industry, to make it so that the rest of the world is watching us, and to make it so the rest of the nation is watching us, because we've changed the way the industry is because of each and every one of you. So I just want to say thank you.
So we also, does anybody have any last comments? So we also put Cloverleaf University, 16 standalone courses and 4 full programs through the Department of Education. And we've actually certified our first round of instructors. And we've actually just put the first continued legal training class through the Department of Education and the Colorado Supreme Court for House Bill 13, 17, and 18. And I did that with Mr. Warren Edson, and he is going to be teaching that class next month. So not only is it CLE accredited, you know, anybody who wants to come is more than welcome. And so that was history, and that's awesome. And I have these little instructor certificates here for him and Charles Houghton, who will also be teaching for Cloverleaf University. So I just want to acknowledge them right now, and for all they've done, and for that class.
I'll put in another plug for Cloverleaf University. I know Chloe's going to be offering the Responsible Vendor Program, which is going to be very important for any of the retail or medical marijuana businesses, because it's now going to be required by the state. Not necessarily required by the state, but I know a lot of municipalities are going to be moving forward in that direction, that if you want to have a retail shop or a medical shop in their district, that you are compliant with the Responsible Vendor Program. So I think that's an important little plug for your industry. And as well, you know, she offers compliance classes, so if you're not quite sure how to license your business, or you know what kind of regulations you need, I know that Cloverleaf University is going to offer that. So there's your plug, Chloe, if you can buy me a beer later.
Well, just for former bar people, that you guys, it's like the TIPS program, is that what it's like? Because some people don't even know.
And it's going to be required. Do you want to tell them, Sam, exactly what that's going to be like?
It is going to be optional. Like I said, it's not required by the state, but they've put it in place. But I know a lot of local municipalities, for example, when you're looking at these cities like Denver, Boulder, Aurora, who are putting in moratoriums, they're not necessarily going to put a merit-based program first, but there's definitely going to be a checklist. And I guarantee you on that checklist is probably going to be, are they participating in the Reasonable Vendor Program? You know, you're talking responsible, sorry. Responsible
is not a word.
Reasonable, yeah. Responsible Vendor Program. So, you know, and as well as like, you know, are they compliant? How long have they been in the industry? Do they give back to the community, you know, charity work? So, you know, so that is, you know, one way to get ahead of the game. And the more points you can have in the pro column versus the con column, you know, the better for your industry and business. So.
Well, and Bob and I were just discussing, if you get in trouble, you'd better have taken the program.
It's kind of like alcohol. It can really save you if you overserve someone, and then they go to sue you.
Or having your license suspended or punished or fined or whatever.
So, we want to thank you all for being here today. I want to thank all of our sponsors, the Cannabis Business Association and BioTrack THC, which our representative actually was, I think, hospitalized today. So we didn't have them here, but they will also be here next time. I encourage you to check out all of their inventory tracking and their systems at biotrack.com. They have amazing software for the industry. I also want to announce our symposium next month, which I'm not even sure what date it is. It's the 4th Thursday of the month. So we look forward to seeing you there. That will be on our website. And I want to thank everybody for being here tonight and all of your support. If you have any questions, you can meet us up afterwards and we'll be happy to answer those for you. Thank you.
You caught all that? Yeah. I missed the first half. I'm really gonna need to listen to this.